This video is made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details. By now, many of you are done with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and likely in the mood for some fresh 3D Zelda. But with the next official game off on the distant horizon, I thought I'd share with you 5 indie 3D Zelda-likes that you may not have heard of or played. All of these are games that I personally enjoyed, and ones that carry with them some of that 3D Zelda magic. I'm John Reardon, you're watching NWR TV. These are 5 indie 3D Zelda-likes available right now that you should try. First off, Windscape. Of all the games on this list, Windscape is one of 2 that I rarely ever hear mentioned by anyone. Windscape is a first-person adventure game that blends Zelda progression and dungeons with gameplay that feels a bit like Elder Scrolls. Meanwhile, the low-poly art style calls to mind RuneScape. It is that smattering of influences that makes Windscape feel very original. Windscape features a semi-open world, which is split into multiple continents that unlock as you progress through the story. Once a continent unlocks, you're free to wander the surprisingly vast environments as you please. The primary story quest will take you through multiple dungeons on each continent. While never reaching the complexity of true 3D Zelda, the dungeons generally each have a unique hook that makes them interesting. They're fun to explore, with plenty of visual variety and secret areas to uncover. I regularly found myself distracted from the main quest, just exploring my environment. All of this is accompanied by an excellent score by Reuven Wegner that reminded me of GameCube classics. One village theme in particular felt like it could have been taken straight from Wind Waker. Next up, Oceanhorn 2. Oceanhorn 2 is the most recent game on this list, and possibly the most technically impressive. It doesn't take long to see that Oceanhorn 2 is quite a looker. While its title implies that it is a sequel to Oceanhorn, which was released on Switch back in 2017, it is in fact a prequel, so you by no means need to play the original to understand the story. Gameplay in Oceanhorn 2 adds some light RPG elements to the classic 3D Zelda formula. This is essentially a 3D Zelda game that you play with a party, which opens up a lot of interesting possibilities for dungeons and puzzle solving. Unlike some cooperative moments in the actual Zelda franchise, Oceanhorn 2 handles this quite well. Party members are not only useful for combat, but crucial for solving the ever more complex puzzles the game presents you with. The world itself is a joy to explore. While not entirely open right away, the world does open up in stages. The progression of the story is quite linear, but you're regularly given opportunities to stray from the primary storyline and explore optional areas. Throughout all of this, you'll be leveling up your gear with optional upgrades and customizing your arsenal's strengths to fit your preferred playstyle. It is a level of personal customization that isn't often seen in traditional 3D Zelda, and really shines to make Oceanhorn 2 unique. Next is Windbound. If there were one game on this list I'd suspect you've heard of, it's Windbound. Not to be confused with the aforementioned Windscape. There's a lot of wind in Zelda-likes. Windbound takes influence from 2 very specific Zelda games, Wind Waker and Breath of the Wild. Windbound tells the story of a woman lost at sea. The player sails from island to island gathering resources to survive and craft gear. Even your boat will be crafted and upgraded using what you find on the islands. There are no traditional dungeons, but the whole thing feels a bit like the overworld of Breath of the Wild, just at sea. Windbound also holds its own against Oceanhorn 2 as one of the prettiest games on this list. Oh, and did I mention the permadeath? By default, Windbound will kick you back to the start of the game if you die, putting an extra heavy focus on survival. However, you also have the option to switch to a more casual mode, which only kicks you back to the beginning of an area. Either way, Windbound is a game about sailing and surviving that should appeal to Wind Waker and Breath of the Wild fans in equal measure. Next we have Yonder. Maybe you're a very specific kind of Zelda fan who loves Breath of the Wild, but wishes it were a bit more like Animal Crossing. Well, boy oh boy do I have a game for you. This is Yonder, and it is the oldest game on this list, having launched in 2018. Yonder takes clear inspiration from Breath of the Wild, but removes the danger. As a result, Yonder feels a bit like Zelda meets Animal Crossing or Harvest Moon. If your favorite part of Zelda is exploring the world and helping the random NPCs with strange side quests, this is for you. Yonder drew a lot of attention when it first appeared, but I don't hear it mentioned often now. After being shipwrecked on an island, you'll slowly uncover the vast open world as you complete tasks for the island's inhabitants. Quests range wildly in type and complexity, and while a game full of nothing but side quests seems like an odd pitch, Yonder pulls it off wonderfully. The world is just so inviting that you can't help but explore every corner. Last, but certainly not least, is A Knight's Quest. Outside of Windscape, this is the other least often talked about game on this list. A Knight's Quest is an expansive adventure game with very strong Zelda influences. You'll explore a vast interwoven open world, clearing dungeons, solving puzzles, and gaining new abilities. It's hard to ignore the charm of A Knight's Quest. The writing is incredibly witty, and I found myself regularly laughing out loud. But beyond its Zelda influences, A Knight's Quest takes things a step further, with full-on 3D platforming that feels unlike anything we've seen in actual Zelda games. This adds an element of challenge to traversal that makes the journey from dungeon to dungeon that much more interesting. On top of all of that, it's a pretty attractive game that turns in some very impressive locales. So there you have it. 5 indie 3D Zelda-likes, all of which are available right now. Have you played any of these, or do you have any recommendations of your own? Let me know in the comments. If you want to know more about any of these games, I've included links to our full video reviews of each of them in the description. Oh, and if you do wind up picking any of them up, I'd love to hear what you think. Give me a shout on Twitter at JTSKnight92 and let me know. If you enjoyed this video, of course, give it a like and consider subscribing to Nintendo World Report TV. You can check out NintendoWorldReport.com for a whole lot more, and you can stick around for information on our Patreon. Once again, I'm John Raridan, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.